The government shutdown continues to deepen. The president, Donald Trump, now signaling mass layoff of federal workers if Democrats refuse to back his budget demands. The Republican president doubled down on threats to shrink parts of the federal bureaucracy. The comments mark a sharp escalation in Trump's standoff with congressional Democrats who remain locked in negotiations over funding priorities. To talk to us about this further, we're joined on the line by U.S. politician and expert, Professor Douglas Yates. Professor, thank you so much for making the time and welcome to Channel Africa.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, Prof, what does President Trump's threat lay off federal workers tell us about his broader negotiating strategy during this shutdown?
He believes that threatening the Democrats will lead them to submit to his will. And if they don't, he doesn't care. He doesn't care about the consequences to the federal workforce, nor to ordinary Americans who rely on federal services, because he lived, well, in his golden palace in Florida, untouched and without any need himself personally, nor his rich donors. So, from his point of view, the Democrats must simply submit. Having said that, if this goes on for a long time, then there'll be a political cost to be paid. But in the short run, for a week, for 2 weeks, maybe even for 3 weeks, I think he's going to play hardball. And that's because he himself, his business, and the interests of his donors are not affected. If you look at the stock market, the American stock markets are at record highs. And this has been fed by in artificial intelligence. And as long as the stock market's booming, he and his kind are satisfied. But the Democrats are planning on using this, their perhaps only weapon, against the Republican agenda.
Yeah, as you indicated that this does not affect him at all. And in your view, do you see this as a tactical bluff, for a lack of a better term, to pressure Democrats or a genuine attempt to basically shrink the federal government?
Okay, I'm so glad you asked that. I think if you were to look at Donald Trump's priorities, it is to bury the Jeffrey Epstein scandal, in which there are documents implicating him in organized crime, pedophilia, prostitution, and that's been the real threat to him. So absolutely anything, a nuclear war, a stock market crash, a government shutdown, anything that draws American attention away from the Jeffrey Epstein scandal serves his interests. The collateral damage he's perfectly indifferent to, and he has no economic program whatsoever vis-a-vis the debt. He had said he wanted to cut the debt, but in the end, like the Democrats, he simply increases it. It's just a question of who benefits from the debt. But no, he has no interest in reducing expenditure. However, he has indicated that he will fire federal workers. Normally, you'll hear the word furlough. What that means is you're temporarily kept at home, and when the event is over, you receive your back pay, your salary. Instead of furloughing federal workers, he's threatening to cut federal workers. But this doesn't have to do with the expenses. The reason he's threatening to cut federal workers is part of his agenda, the MAGA agenda, is to fire people of color. And fire people who have different sexual proclivities, fire people who will stand up to him, like the people who report on the jobs statistics.
Yeah, and talking about firing people who stand up against him, I'm keen to hear your view by forming federal agencies, for an example, as he calls it, quote unquote, Democrats' agencies and a political scam. What kind of narrative, in your view, is Trump trying to build here about the state and bureaucracy?
So, as a populist, he hasn't even really, I think, fully understood that he is now a dictator. But as a populist politician, the position is normally that the government is full of cabals of elites who are stealing, are corrupt, and have plans to destroy the American way of life. And so the image he's always pandered of the United States government is that it's a terrible thing. So, of course, that's not what the Republicans are first think. For them, it's a multi-trillion-dollar cash cow. And they're perfectly happy having large government spending. But, he's not really like Ronald Reagan. He's not an ideologue who has a coherent policy plan. So this is a rhetorical flourish. When he wants to call the army into U.S., he doesn't think it's unimportant. So he's really incoherent, and to understand his opinions about big government or weight, it's a rhetorical flourish for a populist space. That is, he's speaking to the television programs on Fox News that he watches. That's his whole world.
Yeah, and Prof, I'm glad that you're putting this to say that leadership is different. He's not like the previous presidents that we've witnessed in America. But in your view, as a parting shot, what would be the immediate and long-term consequences of mass layoff of federal employees for U.S. governance when they talk about issues around service delivery?
Yeah, so the big financial institutions have provided some simple numbers. One is that it's about 0.1 or 0.2% of GDP per week. So the last 10 weeks, it'll knock the percentage point off U.S. growth. Another effect of those layoffs is that many of these targeted groups are individuals who are reporting statistics that contradict his electoral claims. What Trump wants to do is come into the next year's elections claiming the economy is doing great, there's never been more jobs, the government is fine, and so firing people who work in the government selectively will allow him to eliminate his enemies. The most stunning thing we watched was when hundreds of generals and admirals were pulled to Virginia to be slapped and spit upon by the administration. And those generals were brought in for private meetings. So, as far as cutting down staff, there's nothing objective about it. This is a political purge where the only criteria is loyalty. And that, of course, is the authoritarian agenda.
Yeah. And do you see this escalation weakening investor business confidence in the United States, given the unpredictability and the challenges of governance in the country? Do you see this affecting investor confidence?
So there's going to be winners and losers, and that's the best way to understand this. So yeah, if you're running a small business, you don't know what to do. You've got these tariffs that are making it difficult to calculate how to get your supply chain going. You have consumer confidence problems, so you don't know who's going to buy. But if you're one of the big tech businesses in America, that is, if you're one of the American giants in energy, in artificial intelligence, in weapons, these are going to be the best of times. And you can see that by the stock.
All right, Professor Douglas Yates, thank you so very much for coming on to the show, and have a great evening ahead.
Thank you for the invitation.
All right. There you have it. U.S. political expert Professor Douglas Yates talking to us there about the U.S. shutdown in America.